Okay, let's get started. All right, today's video is going to be about getting the data from your activity monitor. So in Mac, it's activity monitor, and in Microsoft Windows, it's your task manager. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a list of all of the current running process and then save it to a file. So here's all the process that I currently have, and we're going to generate this file here. So here's a list of all of the current processes that are running on my computer at this specific time. And let's see how that's done. Okay, so the first thing is I created a Python file. I'm just calling it files.py. And there's going to be three things that we need to import, and one of them is OS path. We need the OS path because we need to tell Python where the file is going to be located. We're going to write the data to the file, so that's why we need the file path. The import ps util. This here takes a look at your operating system functions, such as the CPU usage, the memory. In this case, will be all the processes that are currently running. And the last thing that we need to import is the date time. This is where we are going to have a timestamp in our file. So when we write something to the file, we want a timestamp when it occurred. So first, let's define three of our variables. The first one is going to be file path, and I'm just going to call it file.txt. So my file, my Py file is saved on my desktop, or actually not my desktop. It's saved in my PyCharm project files folder. So by not specifying the root, I'm just going to save this file in that same directory of where this project is. Okay, so that's where it's at. Then we're going to create a list, an empty list. This list is going to hold all our values from the process. So everything we have here, when we get that information, it's going to save into the list. Okay, and then lastly, we have the DT. I'm going to call it date time. And date time is going to have our timestamp. So every time we run this thing, it's going to show the current time of the process. So the first thing we're going to do is if os.path file path, see os.path dot is file path. So we want to say is this file path true or false. If it's true, meaning if it exists, then let's just print a value out there, and I'm going to %s exists. So what this means is we're going to use a variable s, and we're going to pass in that variable. So in this case, in this scenario, we want to use file path. So it's going to print out, if the file exists, it's going to say %s is going to be whatever variable this is. So in this case, it's file path. So it's going to say file.text exists. And if it exists, then what we want to do is we want to file.open. We want to open that file, right? And we want to open that file, and what do we want to do with it? We want to append records to it, or rows to it, and then that'll be it for this. If the file does not exist, then what we want to do is we want to print, let's see here, %s. This part's not necessary, but you know, I want to show you how things are at, so, or where they're at in terms of troubleshooting as well. Percent does not exist. %s will be created. Then now we need to figure out what the s's are. So let's put the % brackets, and we're just going to say file.text does not exist. File.text will be created. So we'll take this variable, that, comma, that. So the first %s string will be for him, and then the second % string will be for this one. Okay. So now we have file path. Okay. Let's see. Why do I have? All right. File open. File is equal to dot open. Okay. There we go. Then we're going to open the file. And now we're going to actually, this one we're going to write to it. Okay, so let's explain the difference between the two. In this case, if the file already exists, we want to append the new text to the file. This one here, if the file does not exist, then we want to write a brand new file. So it's going to actually create this file here, which is what the W is for. Then we're going to do file.write, and we're going to write log time, and this is going to be the date time, so that when we run the file, every time we run this file, we get a timestamp. So dt is our variable up here, date time. And next thing we want to do is we want to format the string. So when we format the string, we have to use this here function, string format time. This part is really tedious, I think. Let's see, y dash %m dash d h %m. All right, so what this is saying, I want it to be formatted as a year, month, date, hour, and minute. Okay, so that part's done. So now when we open up the file, we should see a timestamp, the first row. So now let's loop through our process. So for each proc, in ps util dot process iteration right here, we want to I want to try this because let's just say if it doesn't exist, the program is going to crash. So if I know there might be a chance that the program might crash, I use the try and except. So this, we're going to pin the proc.name. So once we append the proc.name, this append the, oops, we're going to accept. So with accept, what you can do is you can either write something to the user, say, hey, like can't find process, or you can simply go, you know what, if there's some, if it runs into an error, just pass, meaning just move on. So in this case, I'm just going to print can't find process. Okay, so it's going to loop through proc. Actually, it's going to loop through process iteration. In ps util, it's going to say, okay, I'm going to append proc.name. So it's going to loop through all these processes until it reaches the end. So when it reaches the end, file write, new line. So once we have new line, we're going to join sorted. I want the process, I want our list to be sorted. So that's the sort function. I'm using set because set is going to say everything in my set is unique. So it's distinct. So it's going to take the values from list, which is not unique. It's going to set, so it's going to be now unique. Now that's unique, I want to sort it. Now once it's sorted, I want to add a new line at the end of each append. Okay, so now file.write /n. At the end, I also want to add a couple more carriage return, and then file.close when we're done. So this process here stores all the information from here that's unique and alphabetized. This process here, or step, just adds 2 new carriage return at the end, and then they close the file when we're done. So once we're done, we're gonna run it. Okay, so now let's run it. So I'm gonna do python.files.py, and it says, hey, file exists. So the file already exists. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to take this file and I'm gonna delete it. Okay, so now that file doesn't exist anymore. So now I'm gonna run it again. File does not exist, file will be created. So now here's the file. Now when we open it, the file, we have our timestamp and then all the processes that are currently running. So I hope this was informational. The purpose of this particular video is to actually understand how to write to a file. But I just didn't want to write any simple text to the file. So therefore I brought in the ps-util just so that we can pull in data from somewhere and then write to the file. And I hope you like this video. Please subscribe if you haven't, and thanks for watching.